I'm Hélène Cohen. While society is changing, and it is changing, we have got much more awareness of physical disabilities. We have wonderful things happening on television. You have things like, you have comics with cerebral palsy coming on and being admired and appreciated and laughed at in the way a comic should be laughed at. You have things like The Last Leg, you have the Paralympics. There's a lot going on. That's fine for the open disabilities. It doesn't help with the invisible disabilities. Things like the ADHD, the AS, selective mutism, mental health. These are hidden disabilities that affect us and paralyse us in everyday life. Society it's getting better, it's got an awareness, it doesn't yet have the resources. However, there was a United Nations report on the UK highlighting basically the unnecessarily punitive welfare system that we have. And that is a key issue. Basically, there is enough money in our society. We are a rich nation. However, we are money rich, but creativity and ideas poor in terms of actual real life solutions. Not the policy. The policies are quite often fine. However, in reality, we face a lot of problems for our children and our adults. It's the vulnerable who lose out, the people on the fringes of society. If you have applied for an EHCP, an Education, Health and Care Plan, and you've been denied that, if you are reasonably well off, reasonably intelligent and educated, and reasonably articulate, you can go to tribunal, you make the application, you fill it out, you talk to your other reasonably articulate, reasonably well off, reasonably educated friends, and they support you and you get it done, you get through the tribunal and you might have the judgment overturned. However, if your child has a special educational need or vulnerability in need of an EHCP, it's quite possible that you have some sort of educational need yourself. That puts you at a disadvantage. An example, for example, just go back to the parent-child correlation. In teaching, I've so many times had to, when I send a letter home, everyone gets a letter, but you don't get the ones back. And you blame it on the dyslexic or the dyspraxic for not being organised enough to have it. It could be that the parent isn't literate enough to have read the letter. Simple strategies, a phone call home saying, did you get the letter about? Then detail the letter and say, we just need your signatures for them to be able to whatever. There are strategies we can do, but the parents are often also disabled in some way or other. It might not be that they've got a special need, it might just be that they are living in poverty and they are frightened of the processes by which they would have to use to access the appeal process. And it's the parents who have to make the appeal, not the school. So the schools quite often at that point think, oh, this is now a parental issue, and they leave the parents to it. Not because they're not caring, but quite often because teachers aren't aware that they have a right and an ability to support the parent. The funding may or may not be there, but with an understanding team, the school can help. So we've talked about there's long waiting lists. That's going to again affect the most vulnerable. The waiting lists are longest in the areas of most poverty, the areas of most need. So these children are already vulnerable. That's the waiting list to do your first application. By the time you're in your appeal stage, time has already elapsed. You've already had a child in school unable to access their education. Then the parents are left with this power exchange that is totally unfair. They're hearing words like tribunal, getting legal advice, you need legal counsel. This frightens a lot of parents, but they are then left on their own to try and do it. So then the process doesn't happen. It saves the government money because they're then not having to fund that education, health and care plan. But it's victimising and punishing our poorer people in society. So what we need to do is schools need to support these people. Schools need to be able to go with parents and say, I know you have to make the application, but do you want us to sit down together for half an hour and I'll go through it with you? I will help you through it. You know, I have personally sat down and written what the parent needs writing because the parent has been able to tell me, oh, this and this, but couldn't put it on paper. So we can write it for them. It's their words, they're signing it off, but we can support them. When it comes to going to see your GP because you've got to get the GP to do the referral for CAMS or whatever it is, we can go with. I've sat in GP's offices before now. I've sat there and just been there. Sometimes you don't have to say anything, you can just be there, and that it enables the parent to have a voice. Just having you there, that moral support. I've seen children being given secondary schools where they have to go up spiral staircases to get to their rooms, and the child's got cerebral palsy. How is that fair? But that's the school they've been allocated, because on the application form it didn't have a space to say my child has cerebral palsy. It's a tick box. They couldn't tick that box, so they got given that school, which was totally inappropriate, and they had to appeal that, but they didn't know how. So you have to support that. There's no reason why we can't. We can attend meetings, we can attend tribunals. So a parent doesn't have to be on their own, but teachers need to be aware of that, which goes back to what I've said in the past about teachers being educated. They need to be educated in how to actually help special needs children, strategies to use in the classroom, best ways to deploy the resources you've got and to eke out what you've got, how to do your first application for an education healthcare plan. How do we actually go about that? It's a new system, relatively new. It still needs working through. We need education in that, but we also need to be told we can help the parent when the parent has to do it for themselves. And there's no reason why we can't do that. But at the moment, an objective report, the UN objective report has highlighted that the UK has an unnecessarily punitive welfare system. And in a country that is one of the wealthier ones in this world, I just think that's totally unacceptable.